Welcome everyone to this webinar entitled Women in Project Management. My name is Bill Johnson and I'm the Program Director of the Masters of Science and Graduate Certificate in Project Management here at St. Mary's. So I'd like to welcome everyone and say a special thank you to our panelists and moderator who will be presenting today, as well as the Dean of the School of Business and Technology. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Alumni Association, as well as the School of Business and Technology, as well as the program. I'd like to introduce one of our distinguished faculty members in the project management program, Mary Dunphy, who will take on the facilitation job, facilitating this webinar. Welcome, Mary, and thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, my name is Mary Dunphy, and I will be moderating today. So if I could have the next slide, please. I would like to introduce Michelle Weisner. She is the Dean of the School of Business and Technologies of St. Mary's University of Minnesota. Michelle, would you like to take it away?
Great. Sure. Thank you, Mary, and welcome everyone. A big thank you to Program Director Bill Johnson for making this happen. I am thrilled to be a part of this and share with you a little bit to just kind of open our minds and thinking about women and men in the workplace. And for most of you in particular, thinking about your roles as project managers and how you see difference in men versus women in terms of career progression, compensation, and other things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and walk you through some research that I conducted recently. So my ongoing research, which started with my dissertation, is focused on outcomes of the MBA, primarily career outcomes of the MBA by gender and by race. I started this research the first time back in 2014, and I've done a similar study now 3 times. This latest snapshot of findings that I'm going to share with you is from a study that I conducted in late 2020, and then spent a portion of 2021 analyzing it and sharing the results quite widely. So if you look me up or look up the Forte Foundation, who I partner with on this research, you will find that some of the outcomes from this study appeared in over 30 publications or media outlets in fall of 2021. So everything from the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, Fortune, all of those kinds of entities, to Yahoo Finance, CBS News, and a bunch of other outlets. So with that, I'll jump right in. This particular study was a big one. It focused on MBA and MBA graduates. So I know we're here focused primarily on our master's in project management, but there are a lot of similarities to what I'm going to talk about here. The piece that I'm just going to share a few highlights from is in the career outcomes piece of this. I just wanted to kind of broadly show you the whole scope of this study that looked at the admissions process to graduate school, as well as the experience of being a student. This study had over 3,100 participants, about 70% women, 30% men. And that is because the organization that I partner with on this research is all about women in business and furthering women. So the database that we had was largely slanted toward women and women alumni of MBA programs who are working out in the workforce. It included people who reside all over the globe, 60% of the respondents were in the United States, and just under 10 years of work experience. I think it's also worth noting that about 20% of the respondents were underrepresented minority, which we defined as Black, African American, Hispanic, Latin American, and Native American. So I'll show you just a few quick snapshots, and I think this is pretty eye-opening, and it's probably perhaps not surprising to many of you. So the big thing that people always think about when we talk through outcomes of graduate school, or really outcomes of any educational experience, is how are women doing versus men? This study primarily included people who have graduated kind of in the past 15 years or so. And the data on these two slides is the same. It's just flipped. So one is kind of gender by race and one is race by gender. But as you can see at the top, out of all respondents, men on average earned around $177,000 to women earning $147,000. That is a pretty substantial pay gap, as we can easily see. I did a little quick research in preparation for this as well, and found a couple of different sources related to project management that showed that the pay gap between men and women was around 20%. One article I saw had it at 23%. So not at all unlike what I found here in this research, which was focused on MBA graduates. So what this tells us is that we have some work to do, and we particularly have work to do when it comes to the intersection of gender and race. So if you look at that chart on the left there, if you look at the underrepresented minority, the gap is $57,000 between men and women. That's huge. So it is a personal passion of mine to continue to, I kind of describe it as continuing to add to the conversation on this, and hope that at some point, as I continue to research this, we'll show some slides that are more parallel versus such a dramatic difference. This is also interesting as well. This slide gives me a little hope. On the left, it shows the three similar studies that I have conducted on this topic, 2016, 18, and then the most recent one in 2020. And the gap was cut in half. And I'm not entirely sure why. We don't know that these are the same people answering these surveys, but the last two times that I conducted this research, the gender pay gap was around 39%. This time it was around 20%, which certainly gives me a little bit of hope that maybe things hopefully are moving in the right direction. But I think it's the chart here on the right that is most interesting to think about. And this does tie to some of the research that's out there on the field of project management and how men and women progress from a compensation perspective. So if you see here, what this is showing on the far left is a 9% pay gap between men and women who are 0 to 2 years after getting their MBA. I would say, why is there a pay gap at all? Because these people have just graduated with the exact same credential from the exact same schools, and there's still a 9% gap. But follow that along to the right, and you can see with individuals who have 9 or more years of work experience, that gap grows to 35%. And interestingly, there's a study out there with PMI that shows something very interesting. So they show that early in the career of project managers, between men and women, there's a pay gap of about 4.7%. But as you move along to more senior levels of the organization, that pay gap grows to 26.3%. So very similar trend lines between what my research with the MBA has shown and what we're seeing out there with project managers. Just a real quick couple of other highlights. I think one of the things to remember is that compensation does not tell a complete story of anyone's career success. We know that. So there's two other big chunks of research that I include in these studies. And one is, how are men versus women faring when it comes to other typical measures of success, like level of the organization, number of direct reports, and number of promotions attained since completing your education. You can see here that for each variable, men achieve better outcomes than women. In this particular study, men had about 1.5 years more years of average work experience than women. So that may have influenced some of this, but it's still pretty revealing to see things like the number of promotions where men were closer to averaging 1.7 and women 1.2. The study in the Project Management Institute also attributed their gender pay gaps to the fact that women weren't getting promoted as often as men. So again, some alignment there. I think this is really important, and I'd love to hear what the panelists think about this as well. Everything I've read on the field of project management talks about this as well. What I saw when I looked at comparisons so I asked participants, where do you want to be in 5 years? And to get at some measure of career aspirations. And what this slide shows, it's kind of a busy one, but in general, what it's showing here is that women are outpacing men in kind of earlier leadership categories of kind of senior manager, director, VP, but then men outpace women pretty significantly when it comes to aiming higher for C-level executives, presidents, and CEOs. So I think that's really interesting. 22% of men are aiming for those levels versus only 12% of women. So again, we know that there are many, many reasons that could be contributing to that, but is the reason why women are lagging behind in compensation and some of the other typical measures because we're simply just not aiming high enough. And then lastly, I think it's important to realize that every measure I've talked about so far, again, is a more typical measure of success. But I would argue, as I'm sure many of you would, that your own assessment of your success is equally, if not more, important than your compensation, your level of the organization, and that sort of thing. So I also study how do things like career satisfaction play out, one's own assessment of success. So again, I may show that my salary is not as high as a man who's performing a similar job, but I might consider myself to be really, really successful professionally, academically, and personally. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And then the ever so important topic of self-concept, which is, your overall levels of self-confidence and belief in yourself. So what this piece of the study revealed at a really high level is that, again, there are some key differences between women and men. This is just one deep dive in the career satisfaction piece of it, where men were showing higher levels of career satisfaction on each of the variables that made up the career satisfaction scale. And the largest difference was on level of the organization. And again, that aligns with a lot of what I've read in general about business, but then specifically related to project management, where women just haven't been promoted at the same pace as men. And given that, it's not surprising at all that women may show a greater level of dissatisfaction with the level that they are in the organization versus their male counterparts. So that was a whirlwind, I realize, and it really was meant just to share with you some of what my passions are as not just the Dean of the School of Business and Technology, but as a researcher and as someone very, very committed to furthering women in business, regardless of the discipline. So when Bill came forward with this idea of showcasing the role of women and the success of women in project management, I could not have been more thrilled to support it. So always happy to answer more questions about this research or to share more with you. But for now, I'll turn it back to the panel, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. That was very interesting. It's nice to see actually data on this. It kind of supports what you kind of already know. So with that being said, I would like to introduce our panelists for today. So if I could have that slide, please. We have Ruth Burkholz, Shannon Winger, who has graciously agreed to become part of the St. Mary's University faculty for the project management. So nice to have you, Shannon. And Chris Schoen. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. But before, let's have a little housekeeping. There is a chat window. You can ask questions in the chat window. If you want to direct it to a panelist, that's probably ideal. So that way you'll get the person that you would like to have answer. If you could also, for the panelists, if you could restrict your answers to about 2 minutes or so, we can get through a lot more content. Although if it's really interesting, just go for it, okay? So Ruth, would you like to kick it off and introduce yourself and maybe talk about some of your project management experience?
Sure, thank you. It's great to be here today. Thank you for inviting me to be a panelist. I'm Ruth Burkholz, and currently I'm serving as a project manager in the Corporate Audit Services Department, Data Analytics Department at US Bank. Love it there, so that's fantastic. I also serve on the board of Project Management Institute in Minnesota. I'm serving in the past president role currently and have enjoyed my time there. And I also serve as a treasurer on the Dakota Child and Family Board.
That's awesome, Ruth. So I see you have an awful lot of letters behind your name. If you had to recommend a particular credential to advance the career, which one do you think is the most valuable for this audience?
Foundationally, the PMP is fantastic. I know there's current Agile certifications out there, and there's several of those to pursue depending on what your desires are to learn and grow in that space. The PMP for me is foundational for project management skills. And then I have a number of information security and auditing certifications as well, particular to that field.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ruth. So Shannon, would you like to talk about your project management experience and maybe a little introduction to your background as well?
Sure. I've heard the term once being called the accidental project manager, and I kind of feel like that was me. I did take a class in my undergraduate degree for project management, but before that, I didn't even know it existed. Of course, this was the 90s. But I had been working in the business managing a small web application at the time, and strategically, the company I was working with was looking to create an online presence. Of course, this was, again, back in the 90s. Company-wide. And so I started working with that project team, and someone, one of the lead project managers, took me under her wing to be a business analyst. And I really had no idea what I was doing at the time, but it was a great project team that really helped me. And luckily there was lots of resources and training and mentorship available. After that project, I did officially become a business analyst. And then I progressed to working as kind of a BA/PM, project manager, program manager, implementation manager, and now I lead a PMO team in
Yes, I see.
County.
Director of Hennepin County Law, Safety, and Justice Division, PMO. That's a wonderful.
I feel like it's a little bit of a, not quite, and I'm just a manager, but it's a great group. I love that aspect of it too. I miss working on projects, but being able to watch the team grow and help them in their career development has been very exciting for me. We've got a few folks that are working on their PMP, a few folks going back to get their masters, and taking on stretch assignments and some really big projects. So it's so fun for me to see that growth pattern.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Shannon, and welcome to the faculty.
Thank you.
So Chris, Schoen, same question for you. We want to talk about your project management experience and a little bit about your background.
Hi, absolutely. So I am Chris Schoen, and I'm currently the IT program manager at a company named Jamf. We're a software organization, and I get to oversee the projects for both our IT and networking and also our facilities group. Like Shannon, I would say that I came into project management accidentally. I started in a software industry in the 90s as a business administrator and HR. And at one point, while I was speaking with my manager about career growth and opportunities, he said, I think you need to be a project manager. And at that time, I was not exactly sure what he was talking about, but I listened and I got very excited and very interested. And so I became a project manager at that organization, worked there for 18 years, moved into a financial industry as a senior project manager, and then worked there for 2 years, and then realized that software is my passion. So I took a position at the organization I'm with now. And as I mentioned, I'm the IT program manager at Jamf.
That's great. What surprised you the most when you became a project manager?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is how, at least in our organization at that time, it was misunderstood. I think the groups that I was working with initially thought that project management was going to be a roadblock, or maybe take more time to get something done, because now we were asking them to provide documentation, and we were really working on planning what that project was going to look like, rather than just diving in and hoping that everybody was on the same page and getting things done. So I think that just that misconception that it was going to take longer or it was going to be worse with project management was the biggest surprise for me.
How did you respond to it? How did you address that?
The way I addressed it was education. I would sit down with people and explain to them what the goal was, what the objective was, and how project management could help them and would help them. And I think just having those conversations, both one-on-one and as groups, just sharing all of the knowledge and what we should be experiencing and what the outcomes would be, and then actually following through and proving that it was going to be a tremendous help is what really got us where we needed to be.
Yeah, that value proposition, right? That's awesome. How about you, Shannon? What was the most surprising thing for you when you became a project manager?
I would say the people part of it. You're not only managing a project, but the people. And that can be often difficult at times because everyone is coming into a project with a different lens and has different expectations. Sometimes your end users aren't excited about the project you're doing because it impacts them, maybe in a negative way. So I think that was a big lesson, and I kind of see that on my team with some of the bigger projects that they've got now, is just managing the people and the expectations, and getting the team working all as one and moving in one direction can be quite challenging.
Yeah, and tying it back to Michelle's study, right? It's that job satisfaction thing. So don't just say you're just a manager, because a lot of people quit their jobs because of their managers. So good job, Shannon. Good job, Shannon. So we'll go to Ruth. Have you been involved in PMI? I know you already talked about that. So your role, and how did it enhance your career?
I'm a big proponent of PMI Minnesota and PMI in general. It's been a fantastic path for me. I will say I became a member when I was in my master's of MIS and master's certificate program at a different university. And it was a good addition to my project management path. And I would go to their dinner meetings and was a general member for many, many years. And a few years ago, I had an opportunity to step into a committee chair role for their professional development days. And it was a fantastic way to get engaged, to network, to get to know other people in the project management community, and to really develop leadership skills, communication and coordination skills. I was able to join the board as a president-elect and go through the president-elect and presidency and now past president role. And it's a great organization when you get into the volunteerism to be able to become engaged with PMI Minnesota and take advantage of our programming, stay on top of the emerging topics at our local meetings. And then also as a leader volunteer, we engage with PMI Global as well, and they have fantastic learning opportunities, networking opportunities, and the availability to connect globally with all of their volunteer resources and really get to know others in the PMI community to learn and grow and get in touch with what's coming down the pike for project management as Agile got more and more prevalent, to learn more about that methodology and the frameworks involved with that. So it's a great way to learn and grow and get to know others.
So beyond PMI Global, are there any other resources that you would recommend to stay on top of the project management trends?
Yeah, PMI offers a host of opportunities to learn, whether it's through their programming locally or programming globally. And as part of PMI, they have the PMI community online for webinars. And then also, as you're presenting in our university communities, there's just a whole host of fantastic resources that are available for people to be able to hone their skills, network with other people in the PMI or PM community, and learn and grow depending on what part of their career that they're in, and be able to become an established project manager.
Great, thank you. So Shannon, what is the skill set that a project manager needs to be successful?
I think it's a mix of technical and soft skills. I've seen people that are just awesome in their technical skill set, but don't have those soft skills, and they kind of flounder a little bit. So my recommendation would be for folks to work on their soft skills and really pay attention to change management and understand that, especially in this day and age with COVID, people transitioning to working from home. We still have community issues with violence and social unrest that, especially in my line of business where it's really impacting folks. And because of that, I'm seeing a lot of change fatigue. So just being aware of that as we're working on projects, how just everything in our larger environment impacts folks.
Wow. So Chris, the same question. What skill would you say that a project manager needs to be the most successful?
Yes, thank you. So similar to Shannon, I would say that communication is absolutely key, communication skills, but also emotional intelligence. I believe the two go hand in hand, because I believe that you need to be able to communicate in all situations, but you also need to understand your emotions as well as others' emotions, because you need to be able to not only explain the project to your team and stakeholders in a way that they easily understand it, but you also need to understand their reactions and how those need to be managed, because it's so important to keep the people that are maybe not as excited about your project probably closer to you than some of the others who are absolutely a champion of your project. So just really being able to have that skill set to connect all of the people to the different pieces of the project and making sure that all of your stakeholders are on board and helping you move forward.
That's great. So staying with you, Chris, what was the one thing that you wished you would have done to further your career, and why?
So I wish that I would have gotten my PMP sooner. I was a project manager for somewhere between 10 and 15 years before I decided that, hey, you know what? I think that I should get my project management certificate. So that was one thing. And I also wish that I would have gotten my master's degree sooner. I learned so much in the program. I went into it with many years of experience, but I was still surprised and just impressed at how much I learned throughout the program. And I really do think that it accelerated my career.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chris. Well, we have a pop-up question in the chat. It's from, and I've mispronounced your name, please forgive me, Olaleki. Sorry. What is the future and growth of fresh graduate with master's degree in project management in the project industry and in getting a job as a beginner? Pop-up, anyone can chime in.
So I can take that. So I think if you have experience in project management and you also have the credentials, when you and another person are going through an interview with an organization and you're both equally qualified, if you have those credentials, you're now a leg up from the other person who maybe doesn't have those credentials.
So thank you. That was great. So Ruth, in what industry sector do you see the fastest growth for women and why?
Yeah, I would say there's opportunities. I know I work in the financial industry, and I know we are very committed to D&I initiatives for all women and all diversity programs, and that's been longstanding. I've worked in a lot of financial industry firms and energy firms, and they've had a longstanding commitment for women and diversity programs for many years, and that's been one of the things that has been, I think, they can, all industries can work on. What I've seen probably in the last few years that I hadn't seen prior has been the inclusion of male allies. And so that's been something that hopefully will help propel more women into those advanced positions in a broader sense and more rapidly than potentially in the past years.
So we have another question. It's not been directed to anyone in particular. This is from Sarah Shepard. She asks, I am in my first project management role in a social services nonprofit. This is a new role, and it is clear that the organizational readiness to engage in project management techniques is in the beginning stages of adoption. How do you suggest operationalizing project management techniques for organizations who do not know what to do with a project manager? That's a pop-up. Anyone can answer?
So it sounds like maybe it's a smaller organization, but maybe finding a mentor in the community that has maybe experienced that as a project manager. Just trying to find your networking resources. I think having a mentor in general is a great opportunity for you to learn and receive feedback. But there are a lot of organizations where they may not have the maturity in project management, but maybe chipping away kind of stone by stone to get it set up and get the framework organized. I don't know Chris or Ruth, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would just add start small, because there is so much that you can do with project management. But if that organization is just starting out, it may be overwhelming to begin with. So I would just say start small. Start with your project charter, your business case, and maybe a simple project schedule of some sort, whether it's in a spreadsheet or some other project management tool, and then just start introducing piece by piece and using PMI as a resource, because they have so many good documents that you can utilize.
Great. There was a question and it's gone off my screen, so I'm going to try and summarize it. And that saying that she doesn't have enough experience to take the PMP, and is it worth the CAMP, the associates? And Ruth answered, there's great opportunities to volunteer with nonprofits in nonprofit organizations to grow your skills and your portfolios to gain hours, skills, and ready yourself for the PMP. So asked and answered. So thank you, thank you, Ruth. Moving on. Shannon, how has the role of project managers changed for women?
I was thinking about that one, and I feel like I was looking at some statistics, and I think it's still only about a third women in the industry. So I think we still have a long way to go, but it feels like, especially where I work, it's almost the opposite, where it's 75% women to men from a PM perspective. I'm just looking at my notes here to see if I have anything else, but I guess I haven't quite felt maybe an inequity or something being off balance in my career. Most of my leaders have been female within an IT PMO throughout my career.
Chris or Ruth, do you have anything else to add on how the role of project manager has changed for women?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I know I've been blessed to work with some very strong women project managers, mentor with them, and have worked with some excellent project managers, women project managers in consulting firms on projects that I've worked from an audit perspective and within PMOs. So hopefully, women that are up and coming in the project management field will feel like they're welcome there and build a career in the field, and getting involved with PMI, other project-based organizations, and finding mentors, leaders, finding a place in an organization where you feel comfortable and where you feel you can build a career, I think is very important.
Chris, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that I think they're more accepting of both project management and women as project managers from my experience. It's that they're trusted to take on more complex projects with confidence than I saw years ago.
So Shannon, what was the one thing that you did that enhanced your career, and why did you do it?
I think it was a little bit twofold. I sought out a lot of training opportunities to learn both technical and soft skills, which helped build my knowledge base and made me more confident and increased my ability to communicate with the project team and in kind of all levels. But I also worked a lot with my leader, expressing my desire to grow. I always volunteered to help on things, whether if it was just as I was starting out, small pieces of, doing action items or doing notes, whatever it was, just to get some experience and exposure. Consistently asking for feedback from folks you're working with, especially your product owners, and seeking a mentor. And I know that's been mentioned a few times, but I have had some amazing female mentors along the way. And sometimes at the beginning of my career, I didn't even recognize it as a mentor relationship, but how much I've learned from them and how much they've elevated me, it's just been amazing. And I hope that I can do that with some of my team as well.
Yeah, pay it forward. That's great. So, Chris, what would you recommend that students do to jumpstart their careers?
So as Shannon said, I would say a mentor is absolutely something that has been invaluable to me throughout my career. Just making sure that you have somebody who is at that higher level that can help guide you and answer your questions and help you through whatever it is that you're going through, because they probably have already been there and have seen what you're seeing. So just getting the advice from those mentors is so important.
Ruth, do you have anything to add on? For students to jumpstart their career, that is?
Yeah, I know a mentorship has been mentioned, and that's been huge in my career at different various points. I would say volunteer is a good thing to get experience, to grow your career and get your feet wet. It's an excellent way to build your skills and network. I know in PMI we've had some fantastic students come in from the various universities, and it's been great for networking, finding out who's hiring in the Twin Cities and beyond for project managers, to build up, their initial skill set and core skills in project management, and go through some of our committee projects and get the actual hands-on experience. So that's a great opportunity to be able to come in and do some boots on the ground kind of planning and communicating and things like that. So there's some invaluable experience for PMI and other professional organizations too, whether they need communications people, event planning people, things like that. And it's a great way to get to know others in the Twin Cities community.
I would also add, if they're already in a project manager role and they have the experience, that getting their PMP is so critical to advancing that, because again, having that credential shows that project management, that you've spent the time and the effort.
And Chris, like you said, I wish I would have gotten mine 10 years earlier than I did.
So that kind of leads us back to a slide that Michelle had about aspirations. So if you had to gauge your career path for aspirationally, are you where you thought you were going to be? Are you where you need to? Are you happy with where you are, or do you have higher expectations? And I'm gonna pick on you again, Shannon.
I am really happy with where I'm at. I have been in the private sector, and now I'm in the public sector, and there's been a lot of growth for me. We've gone through a reorganization, and we're kind of building our team right now and taking on more responsibilities and more groups that we support. It has been challenging just in the last 2 years with the political climate and the social unrest and violence, supporting public safety and all of the impacts that folks have had there. But I've got a really great team, and I think I've mentioned this, but just half of my team just came off of a really large program, and they're starting another large program, and just watching their growth from the start of the first program to where they are now, it's been so tremendous to see how much they've learned and how much more confident they are, their ability to deal with difficult situations and have hard conversations, even the technical skills that they've learned, especially around data analysis, which I think is also something that's very important to folks to be able to understand the data. But I think for me, it is a little tricky to figure out what is the career progression for a project manager. Where do you go after you've kind of achieved the top position? So now that I'm leading the PMO team, it's a little bit different focus and really just helping the team learn and grow and getting them to where they want to be. So I'm really enjoying that.
That's awesome. So Chris, same question. Are your aspirations, are you happy where you are? Do you have higher aspirations? Do you have a map for next?
Yes.
vista?
So yes, I am happy. However, I also have future aspirations. So I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love where I'm at. I have the opportunity to mentor people, both formally and informally. My next step, though, is I want to formally be an instructor at either a technical college or university, because I think the just most wonderful thing that you can share with people is knowledge. And so I really hope at some point that that's where I'll land.
Great. Ruth, same question. Aspirations.
Yeah. My career has taken a winding road. I really love to do audit. I really love to do project management. I sprinkled data analytics in with both typically. And I really love the manager I have. I love working at the bank, and my team is fantastic. And I have been in that position and changed my situation and not been as happy. So yeah, I mean, if there's opportunities to grow, that's fantastic. I am lucky to be in a position where the projects that I have are challenging and varied. That's what I like about project management and audit, is that you get to learn new things. That's what I like about both of those fields. So yeah, never know where I'm going to end up next, but right now I love where I'm at.
So that takes care of my next question I was going to ask you. So what's next? So we'll wait and see. You'll have to keep us in tune. So we have a question in the question and answer from a C. Lohmeyer. Can you weigh in on a master's certificate or degree in project management versus a PMP certificate? Is there an industry preference? Anyone?
I would say from my experience, it really depends on the role you're looking for, because if you're looking for a higher level role, then the master's degree is something that's more sought after from the organization, just from what I've seen. If you are at a general level, then the PMP is definitely sought after. If you look at positions, open positions, you'll see oftentimes that a PMP is preferred.
Mary, maybe I could chime in on this one.
I was wondering, Bill, where if you were.
Well,
Welcome.
it's been so much fun listening to you all talk. I mean, it's been quite interesting. The master's in project management really is the top level of education that you can receive as a potential project manager, and it is for those students and those individuals that really want to move up the ladder, become the program manager and the portfolio manager down the road. PMP certification is kind of a milestone. It is a really excellent credential that you will want to receive as you move through your career. One of the things to be aware of is that because the Masters of Science in Project Management here at St. Mary's is specifically accredited by PMI GAC, the global accreditor of PMI, Project Management Institute, you don't have to have as much work experience. Instead of 3 years, you only need 2 years. So there is that advantage of getting your Masters of Science. Now, the certificate in project management, which is really 4 classes within the master's degree, is really a good starting point and will get you ready to perhaps take the CAPM, the CAPM certification. And that will help you get your foot in the door as a project manager. It shows that you have a great deal of interest in the field, and it is a good way to get going there. So all of them are valuable. All of them are very important, and each one kind of builds upon each other.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. I've got a comment and I have 4 open questions. So we'll start with the comment. This is from Christine. I received my MSPM from SMU and has truly impacted my career. And I also received my PMP to the positive. And that's awesome.
That's awesome.
So yeah, congratulations. So moving to the questions, and again, they don't seem to be directed at anyone, so they're pop-ups. Holly asks, how can you ask for a raise once you've completed a certificate or a master's degree? What is fair to expect as far as compensation for these achievements?
That's always a hard conversation, I think, for a lot of us to have, of, feeling that you're worthy of getting an increase. I know myself, I'll use resources like Glassdoor to kind of see what is happening in the industry and around me locally. But I know there's also some limitations on, how far in each maybe grade level or step that you're in of what that salary range is.
So do your research is what you're saying for comparison? Glassdoor is a good source for compensation. If you can put in your experience and your location, sometimes it can give you sort of a ballpark idea. So I have another question from user. How do you do to help women who wish to be higher than they are now, but they can't due to different reasons, empower, and then in parentheses, empowering them? How do you help women, I guess, raise themselves up, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think this is Ruth. I think one thing you can do is maybe try and find a mentor resource, whether it be in a school program or a work program, or there's the Minnesota Workplace Association, and try and find some kind of guidance and develop a goal or a plan to try and determine what are the next steps to try and get to the place you want to be, whether that's additional education, whether that's certification, whether that's maybe finding a different company or a different career plan, and then try and find, identify what are the barriers and determine what can be done. And it might be a long-term plan, might not be immediate, but try and identify with a career coach or someone at your company or someone outside of your company, what are those things that you can do to try and improve your situation, and what does that look like? What is improvement? And then try and make that happen over time.
Okay, from D. Burton, I have been a PM for 25 years and I found learning new technology, understanding the business and technology. My career has been very diverse, and one of the biggest, hurdles is to gain buy-in from the team. What would you suggest as a way to move a team forward?
I would say just communicating with them, asking them what their needs are, and really truly asking those questions, the why questions, when they're stating what they need or what their thoughts are, so that you can understand where they're coming from, and then also having that conversation about where you believe you need to be, and somehow coming to that middle ground or agreement on what's best for the organization and individuals moving forward.
That's great. So Lynn asks, if your employer paid for your master's, is it appropriate to ask for a raise when you graduate? And in parentheses, she says, I also have my PMP.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Doesn't hurt to ask. This is from a manager. Doesn't hurt to ask.
I would say it's always good to have that conversation either during or before you're going as well. That way you have your expectations set, because if you don't have those conversations, then the answer will always be no.
I totally agree. I'm going to say absolutely always ask and set the expectation that yes, you will be given. The employee benefit is an employee benefit. The investment in the education goes far beyond just the dollars that your employer pays for that credential. So hands down, you should ask. And I agree with Chris, the more you can start having those conversations either before you go back to school or during and along the way, the better.
So there was a question in the chat that was answered by Michelle. The question was from Sarah. It says, do you feel like you are paid at a rate that makes it feasible to cover a master's degree in project management? And Michelle had answered, in my research, which is largely with MBA graduates, the salary growth is tremendous from pre to post MBA. 50% are or more in most cases. So it's a good idea to do the research and then calculate the ROI. When will the investment pay off?
Yeah. It's always good. It's pretty shocking to see how much growth people attain from getting even a master's certificate, and not even necessarily a full degree. But once you start adding those new skills and experiences to your toolkit, it can really just take off from there. So I think it's always a good idea to sit back and think about, when will I break even from this? You know, if I take out loans and or my employer pays for this, or I dip into my savings, when will I be able to pay all of that back and you know, reap the benefits of the investment in time and resources that I've made.
One other
So-
thing I wanted to mention here is that PMI often publicizes salary information, and specifically between those individuals that have PMP certification versus those that do not, as well as a master's. And both of those, and I haven't looked at it recently, but in the past, it was approximately a $24,000 increase once you have a master's degree in project management from not having it. So that's just look at what some of the PMI publications are saying about that as well.
Okay, so we have another question from Katie, who is currently a project manager, asking for advice on what to do career-wise when I had the conversation upon finishing my master's that I won't be getting a raise with my master's degree since it's not quote unquote required for my role. I guess that's feeding back to having the conversation earlier on to set expectations. Yes, I think I heard one of the panelists mention that.
Yeah, and that can be tough too, because if you are really loving every other aspect of your job, I think that's kind of one of those things you'll have to weigh if it's something that you want to continue working where you're at, or if you want to look elsewhere where you may be compensated differently for having your PMP.
So we have one more question from a user, but we're also at the 2-minute mark. This says, there are different challenges facing project managers depending on the environment or areas that people come from. What are the challenges that you mostly face as managers?
Resources. There's never, ever enough resources.
And I concur. It's time, money. Yes, resources are scarce. Everybody's overtasked these days, multiple hats. Well, is there any other, Bill, do you want to take the closing thoughts, please?
Well, thank you, Mary, for facilitating this panel discussion. And I want to say thank you to Shannon, Chris, Ruth, and Michelle. This was truly an excellent conversation, and it was fun to watch and listen to it as well. If you have any interest in pursuing either your Master's of Science in Project Management or your graduate certificate in project management, please reach out to our admissions office. You can also reach out to myself as well here, and I would be more than happy to sit down and talk with you. There are some exciting things happening in project management. Recently, the new PMBOK guide was released, and we are busily, the faculty, and Mary knows this as well as Shannon, working hard to integrate that into our curriculum, and that is going to be an exciting moment when that occurs later this year. So if you have any interest, please contact me. As you probably have heard over and over again, that it does help your career and does increase your income capabilities. So thank you, everyone, for participating in this. We had a great turnout. I saw about 45, 50 people attending. So thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of this fantastic webinar today.